So Runty's doing much better today. Actually, I think his eyes have pretty much cleared up and perked up a bit and is a little bit more active, a little less slow. So I think most of the worst part is behind him. And you can see that all these other chicks, no, not really chicks now, they're kind of half grown, but all these other 2.5 week olds over there, they're actually the same exact age as little Runty. So first came out of the egg, he was walking kind of funny and kind of shuffled. And I thought maybe there was something wrong with his legs, so I looked, but there was nothing, nothing, all the normal things to look for with, leg deformities or injuries. He didn't have any of that. And he just initially seemed a little slower than the rest of them. And, was eating and drinking, but just slower. And then had some eye issues, I honestly think it looked like somebody had been pecking at his eyes. And so I sat here and I watched and I was like, okay, who's being a bully? And I actually found only about 2 or 3 that were really, really bothering him. But I found, this many that were, to the point where they were at least pestering him a little bit. So I separated them. And the initial video I did, I wasn't sure if Runty was going to pull through, but, it's just so much better, so much more alert than he was before. I think he's got a pretty good chance. Again, some of them just kind of look really, really good and really healthy, and for no reason at all, seemingly no reason at all, something happens. But usually when they get past that 2-week mark, that's when you're going to run into the least amount of problems after that. If they can survive for the first 2 weeks, typically. And this is a really good example. They're all lined up here. A white jumbo and a standard size, and then Runty. And some of these jumbos, actually are growing kind of at the same rate as the standards. You don't know how big they'll really get until they're full grown. But you see one right there is kind of the same size as the standard, and the next one that just came up to them is, growing a lot faster. So with these jumbos, you really can't tell because they all go through growth spurts so fast, and you can't tell for sure whether or not it's going to be a true jumbo until it gets bigger, because that little guy sometime might surprise you. Not Runty, but that little one right there, that white one, might surprise you on the left and have a growth spurt and then outgrow this big fat guy. So, but yeah, they're all the same age, and for most part, they're all the same size, except for little Runty. And the last few days actually caught up quite a bit. It used to be a lot, even smaller than this. This is the smallest runt that I've ever had that has survived. So it's hard to do everybody at the same time, because they all want to move and they all want to get off my hand. But this here is a kind of a standard size, 2.5 week old-ish. Can't remember when they were born. And he's not happy about being held, but actually haven't had time to socialize them much. So this is one of our bigger jumbos that we have. I don't know why. When you pet them, it seems like they freak out less. And then here's little Runty, which he thinks I'm going to do his eye drops. Now he's realizing there's no eye drops coming. Okay, so you can see, those eyes almost look like there's a little scarring there. They used to be totally closed or almost closed, and I've just been working a lot to get them. And he's still on eye drops because they're not totally healed, but they look so much better. Almost back to normal. Got a few scruffy spots, but that's indicative usually of somebody really picking on them. So, and the fact that no one else had this eye issue, and the fact that I did not see any stuck egg, at birth on this guy, makes me think and the fact that his eyes are healing now, makes me think that's the only thing could possibly be, that someone was just pecking at his eyes. I don't know why, but some of them are just born and they choose, violence. like they're born and they just choose violence for whatever reason. and they just want to peck out everybody's eyes, especially the omegas. And so I think that's what happened. This guy was the omega. He's got his eyes pecked out, and he wasn't walking right at the beginning, but now he's walking, normal. So I think at the beginning they saw he wasn't walking right, and they thought, oh, okay, that's the weak one. Let me pick on it. So instead, like I've said before, instead of having, everybody that grows the fastest and whatever that gets, less feathers pulled out, least feathers pulled out, instead of, keeping those guys, I keep whoever is the nicest. So it doesn't matter how fast they grow to me. It doesn't matter, as long as they're docile. And then the ones that have a bit of an attitude, those are the ones that I actually call. Those are the ones that go to butcher. And now all these guys probably do not have that much of an attitude, because there's only 3, like I said, that were really, really picking on him. But I wanted him to have the full chance of healing completely. Him or her, I don't know yet. So I didn't really take a chance with these guys that looked like they were testing him a little bit and pestering him just a little bit. I just didn't want to take a chance. So those 3 that were really mean were also being a little bullying to everybody else too. But the rest of these guys probably are not going to go to butcher unless they start, going through puberty and being really aggressive males. Doesn't matter whether they're a rooster or hen, as long as they get along, they stay. Of course, to a certain extent, because if they were too many roosters, then they'd fight over hens. So we just kind of picked the ones that are the most chill, and because of most people doing it the opposite way, picking the ones that grow the fastest, the ones that don't have any feathers missing, is that everybody picks on. And so through generations and generations, it is possible that since they cull for inadvertently, they're just trying to keep their breeding animals, the ones that don't get picked on, and then eat the rest of them, which I guess makes sense if you're doing it mainly for meat, but we're doing it mainly for eggs and for, even just pets. So, and still I still find a problem with that, because, you can still pick the nice ones to breed. You don't have to, most of these, even if they are omegas, will grow about the same rate. So that it's possible, like I was saying, that they could just, over time, inherit this kind of overly dominant personality, because you're always breeding the most dominant, birds, and you're always culling the omegas. So this way, I'm kind of undoing that inadvertent, circumstantial selective breeding. They probably, it's just not what they were, trying to do. They weren't purposefully trying to breed in all these bullies into the gene pile. But, I think over many generations, you still are going to have some bullies, and it may not change at all. Because each bird is an individual, but you have a better chance, anytime you breed for something, no matter what it is, you have a better chance of eventually getting results down the line. And typically, if I'm going to have like assassin quail, they're coming from those giant quail farms that farm them only for meat, and everybody has no choice but to fend for themselves there. At places like that, they either are really tough and defend themselves well, or they die, because there's just too many birds, sadly. In this little cage right here that I've got temporarily, this is not even their, they get a huge free range thing, and once they get all their little head feathers in, that's where and all their flight feathers in, that's where they're going to go. This is the brooder. This is the, big baby brooder, and, in a size like that, they'd have like 100 quail. It's ridiculous. Packed in like sardines, 50 to 100 of them. And these places that do more specialty, they could be big, but they still, sell to people for aviaries, for, ornamentals, even their jumbos seem a little more chill, because I think they probably are operating on a smaller scale, and it makes sense that, just down through the line, over time, that they have had less reason to fight, therefore their babies end up being a little less dominant. So I don't know. I'll have to see. But most of the time, like I'll tell you right now, there's like I said, those 2 or 3 going to butcher. But the rest of these guys, I can reintroduce them, probably no problem. Um, the only reason why they were picking on Runty was when Runty was still injured and weak and not even moving right. And that is more instinctual based. That's a flock instinct because they know that that animal is going to slow them down. In the wild, it would slow them down and it wouldn't be able to keep up. And so that's just kind of an instinctual thing that they're going to get over once Runty, is fully kind of back to speed and gets a little more weight on him. Part of it, however, could be a learned behavior because I've had chicks that, at least especially chicken chicks, you get one really mean chicken chick and everybody else is mean to everybody because they're trying to defend themselves and act big. And, this part of that is a learned behavior. So my worry is now that these guys are in with the 3 that were mean, that they might initially be a little pecky when I put them back with that, with the rest of them and with Runty. And so I'm going to think about possibly waiting just for this half, maybe keeping them in the brooder a little longer, just long enough to sex them, and before letting them out in the free range, and seeing how their personality kind of shifts when they become roosters. Because if they're already more dominant birds as chicks, and then on top of that they're not a hen, they're a rooster, then you have to gauge, okay, how is that going to ultimately alter their personality when they get all that, testosterone and teenage boy stuff in their system. I just had one that I had to cull because of that. He was the sweetest little thing when he was a chick, but man, once he hit puberty, he was like even trying to mount the other roosters and was pulling the feathers off of everybody, every single one of them. And he was in the obviously he was in the free range environment, so he had plenty of space. They weren't fighting over space or any kind of any resources. He just went berserk once he hit puberty. Anyway, so yeah, that's little Runty. And we'll do another update when Runty and all these other guys go out into the main free range enclosure.